Welcome to Net Price, where we don't cook rice. So if you saw the last video, you'll know that I unboxed and had a little peek at the RTX 3070 from NVIDIA. So that's the card that we're looking at today. Hello, it's me from the future. I recorded the introduction before I looked at the benchmarks, which was probably a mistake. So now the entire video has changed slightly, because now I realised that my CPU kind of bottlenecks the GPU, even though it's a 6-core 12-thread CPU. So I kind of knew it might do that, but I wasn't sure how much. And I mean, for me, it's not really that much, but for most people, it's quite a bit. So really this video now is about showing you the performance on the card if it's getting bottlenecked by a CPU, which is still decent performance if you're running at 60 FPS. If you're running on a high refresh rate monitor, you will definitely want to upgrade your CPU more immediately if you're running this card. So the way I found out that it was a bottleneck was because I changed from high settings to ultra and actually noticed better performance on ultra or equal performance on ultra in terms of FPS. And then also looked at my CPU usage, which was well above the GPU usage. So yeah. So if you're looking for a true to life representation of the RTX 3070 and how it performs at its absolute max, this is probably not the video. But if you do look at those sort of videos, I recommend looking at quite a few as opposed to just one, just so you can compare people's results, because some people have different results to each other. So this video is very much about if you have a CPU similar to mine. So I have an i7 5820K. It's 6 cores and 12 threads, but it's a bit outdated now. This is what you can expect if you're getting an RTX 3070 before upgrading your system. This is all generally 1440p because I have a 1440p ultra wide. I don't have a 4K monitor, but yeah, you'll understand from the results how you're going to get good performance on 4K monitors as well. So without further ado, here we go. So as well as the i7, I have 32GB of RAM. I'm running at 1440p, and you can see it classifies me as UFO on user benchmark, as before it classified me as a yacht with the 970. So brilliant increase in performance. And here we go for how the GPU is doing. Similarly to the previous score, the Fairmark score is equal or better to the RTX 2080 Ti with people with the same CPU as me. The same with this as well. But obviously people with better CPUs who are using the cards to their full capability have better scores. And I'll leave you to look at the game performance, and afterwards I'll summarize. So I think it's fairly obvious from all the benchmarks there that there is a bottleneck present, and it's quite significant. Not significant enough that it like really affects your performance and goes below 60 FPS really. One of the things I notice is running it at ultra is generally better or the same as high settings. So if you do have a bottleneck CPU that you're looking to upgrade and you want the best performance you possibly can, I'd recommend running at ultra as much as you can, because then it's giving the graphics card more work than the CPU, so the bottleneck is far less. So from start to finish, Battlefield 5, pretty decent performance there, to be honest. You can expect, if you don't have a bottleneck CPU, like about 120 FPS on ultra, I believe. In 1440p or 4K, I can't really remember, but you have pretty decent performance there for high refresh rate monitors. So I did actually test it on DirectX 11 as well. I didn't include it in the video because DirectX 12 was better, about 10 FPS, 15 FPS better. So run that game in DirectX 12 for the best performance. Again, I noticed ultra settings were generally better than high settings. Ray tracing on high and ultra, you get 60 FPS around about, maybe 10 FPS more on high. And then when ray tracing is disabled, you get around 85 to 90 FPS on ultra and about 80 FPS on high. So when we move over to Star Wars Battlefront 2 is where we've seen a bit of a confusing result, because DirectX 11 actually performs way better than DirectX 12, significantly as well. I'm guessing this is because of poor optimization and not the fact that it's bottlenecking, because other DirectX 12 games seem to run perfectly fine and better than DirectX 11 games. Personally, I didn't see any difference in the visual quality in the game when I was playing DirectX 11 and DirectX 12, so I'd recommend you try DirectX 11 for the best performance. So again, you saw the results there, getting about 120 FPS on ultra settings and about the same on high, maybe a bit lower on high. Then we moved over to Flight Simulator, and these results are probably one of the worst results because it's so CPU bound. Now, I've seen people with this card get 70 FPS on Ultra on 4K and not 1440p, so CPU bottleneck is a bit of a downer here because we're getting 30 FPS on Ultra and 35-ish on high. Whilst the CPU usage isn't more than the GPU usage, weirdly, I 100% know it's the CPU causing the issue. And then for all of the other games that I tested, pretty much the same results really. It's kind of better or the same on Ultra. It's better to push your card to that if you have a bottleneck from your CPU. But yeah, so in general, you'll get pretty decent performance even with a CPU that's bottlenecking, unless you have something like a quad core, which will absolutely kill the card. But in general, you'll get around 80 FPS to 90 FPS. Over all the games I tested, is around the average from both of the high and ultra settings, sometimes creeping a bit above. So that's more than good enough for most games. So esports titles, don't even ask about them because they're obviously going to run fine, and they're made for high refresh rate monitors. So if you have a high refresh rate monitor, the chances are you're using that for esports titles as opposed to games like Battlefield 5 and stuff, which are more demanding. So yeah, generally, even though there's a bottleneck, it's quite a high bottleneck, you may be disappointed, but you know that you're going to be upgrading anyway. Hopefully you're not expecting to get the full performance out of this graphics card if you have a CPU similar to mine anyway. So as I said in the beginning, check out loads of other people's videos who have fantastic CPUs and don't have a bottleneck. You'll see that the performance on this card is magnificent. But even with the bottleneck, when I did the tests at the start, like Furmark and other types of tests, I was on par with the RTX 2080 Ti with a similar CPU. So I'm guessing people who have an RTX 2080 Ti and this CPU also experience the same amount of bottlenecking, because I'm getting similar and even better results than them. But then people with other processors that I've compared my computer to get way above my graphics card, which is obviously due to the CPU and not due to the fact that this graphics card is any worse. In fact, it's the same and better than the RTX 2080 Ti. So thank you very much for watching this video. I apologise for a CPU bottleneck video, kind of a weird video. I don't really know who will watch this. It's mainly for me. I enjoy making these type of videos, so please do get subscribed if you enjoyed it or you like the other videos I put out on the channel. Thank you to everyone that liked and commented on the previous video as well. And hopefully I'll see you soon.